She hit the ground hard, cheek scraping caliche, the frost-brittle grass biting her palms. A tin pail rolled on its rim and clattered to a stop under the wagon's axle. Boots circled. Someone spat. "Don't come back!" a woman hissed, the same woman who'd taught her to braid when she was 11. The church bell rang once, an iron cough in the throat of morning. Dust hung like pale smoke around the schoolhouse door where the notice was still tacked. Unfit, unsuitable, unwelcome. She kept her eyes on the dirt. If she met their faces, she would splinter. She gathered herself, pulling the shawl tight over a dress gone shiny with too many winters. The pail went in her elbow. The town's main street, such as it was, stretched thin and cold beneath a rising sky. Frost laced the watering trough. A dog watched from the shade like an old judge. "Myra," someone said, softer than the rest. Not a hand offered, just the name like a question that no one would answer. Then the door of the mercantile closed, and the latch turned as if even sound didn't trust her. She walked out anyway, out past the last clapboard fence, past the cottonwood that dropped yellow coins in fall, out where the road surrendered to pasture and the smell turned to sage, horse, and the faint bitter of creosote waking in the sun. Her breath steamed. The land opened like a held breath. No witnesses, no eyes, only the wide quiet of the high plains. And that quiet took her, held her, didn't ask who she had been to them or what she had done to make them point and whisper and fold their children behind their skirts. She made it to the fence line before the sob rose. It came raw and clumsy, the sound of a throat that had been good for holding words, not throwing them into the air. She pressed her face to the sleeve of her shawl and let it happen, the way you let rain have the roof. A meadowlark answered from the post, as if the bird was saying, "I heard it, that's enough." When the first gunshot came, it didn't belong to her story. It cracked the sky behind her. Then another, closer, a mean, flat sound that kicked off the hill and came back with dust on it. Myra froze. A third, the sound of hooves. Rough voices in the distance, one of them laughing, the sort of laugh men wear when they want to look bigger than their own shadows. She did what she'd been taught since little. Make yourself small. She moved to the ditch and slid in among winter weeds, her fingers goading the brittle stalks to lay down over her. She couldn't make her breath small. It came fast and noisy in the cold. She covered her mouth with the shawl and lay so still the blood throbbed in her ears louder than the horses. They appeared like weather, 4 men, bandanas loose in the wind, guns out, riding a cut that led from the creek. Their coats were the kind road bandidos wore when they wanted towns to think they were cowhands, and cowhands to think they were townsmen. One man's hat had a turkey feather stuck in the band. Wrong season, wrong bird. All of it a snide grin. They weren't shooting at her. They were shooting at the sky because it felt good to make something bigger than you flinch. The 5th rider came quiet. No shout, no flourish. Coat plain, hat plain. A roan under him that moved like it had learned its lessons, slow and right. He didn't belong to the other 4. You could tell by the way they looked back at him. That quick checking a man does who knows there's a deeper current in the river he pretends to own. The first 4 turned at the fence line and found her ditch, not with eyes but with habit. You ride enough bad country and you learn to see where fear lies down. The turkey feather grinned wider. "Well now," he said, leaning in his saddle, "isn't that a little fox in a furrow?" The muzzle of his colt nose down toward her shawl. "Come up. Let's see the face the Lord forgot." Myra did not move. Moving had never saved her in town. Not moving might save her in pasture. The plain rider drew even with them and did a small thing. He put his horse between her ditch and their guns. No words. He sat there like a gate that had always been part of the fence. A hand rested on the horn, the other on his thigh, glove creased, knuckles scarred in a map of old debates. Turkey Feather snorted. "You don't know what you're stepping into, friend." She swung up clumsy, skirt fighting, shawl sliding. Calder didn't touch her. He steadied the stirrup with 2 fingers and then stepped back as if the air around her had become white glass. She turned the roan toward the line of junipers. the low path, the day that might not spit at her. At the bend, she looked back. He was already walking, coatless, hands in his pockets, head turned to the ground, as if he listened to frost crack and could hear language in it. Myra pressed her knees, and the roan moved. She did not know that just beyond the junipers, the law wore the same color as the brush, and that it was already listening for her name. The quiet one looked at him once. Not a threat, a measuring. The kind of look a man gives a winter, counting feed, counting cattle, counting how long the cold plans to stay. "Ride on," he said, his voice carried without effort. Not deep, not loud, just set like a fence post. "There's nothing here for you." "Looks like something to me." The gun wagged, maybe two somethings. Laughter from the others, that bleached sound again. One of them spat dark, and it steamed. The quiet one shifted in the saddle, and that was all. The roan stepped exactly sideways once and planted. "Ride on." The words had more space between them. The space felt heavy. Turkey Feather's smile got crooked, which is the dangerous kind of smile. The gun came up off the ditch. He flicked the hammer with his thumb, a learned, lazy move. The quiet one's hand moved too, but not to his own gun. He lifted his palm, slow enough for any skittish animal to understand. He set it on Turkey Feather's barrel, just laid a hand on it. Nothing in the world more disrespectful if you're a man who thinks a gun is a voice. No one breathed. Even the roan seemed to stand on the idea of stillness. "You're touching my iron," Turkey Feather said. The words were kid-mad, the kind you hear on a schoolyard about a toy truck. Myra watched. She was a woman who had spent months being watched, weighed, taken apart by glances. Now she studied instead. The quiet one's face was not handsome, not ugly. It was a field that had been used properly, furrowed, weathered, something growing under it. "I am," the quiet one said. "It's pointed wrong." Then, without a jerk, without a glare, he guided that barrel down and away, slow as turning a child's chin from trouble. "Ride on." One of the others lifted his gun, muscle first, brain after. The quiet one ignored him and looked only at the hand he still rested on Turkey Feather's colt. It was an invitation. Choose to be embarrassed and ride, or choose to be a fool before your friends. Pride is a narrow trail that rarely loops back. Turkey Feather's jaw worked. He had 4 men behind him and an empty morning to fill with the proof of himself. He tried to yank the colt free. The quiet one didn't grip harder. He simply didn't let go. She learned the roan's rhythm the way you learn a hymn. First by following, then by humming, then by knowing where the line rises before the music says it will. Days folded like flour into each other. She kept the low country and the trees' shoulders, and when the land asked for patience, she dismounted and walked to give the horse his lungs. At night, she found the places the hills used for secrets, a notch that held wind back, a basin of grass that had learned how to grow under snow. She ate the bread she had stolen with shaking hands from her own kitchen table, and the jerky a woman with soft eyes had shoved into her pocket while all the others watched their feet. Calder came at dusk on the second day, like the shape of a shadow lengthening in the last light. He'd found her by reading what she left behind, a print where a stone's frost had been bruised, a bent twin stem of blue grama not bent by a rabbit. He didn't say clever words about tracking. He set down a small sack of beans, a twist of salt, a tin of lard with a dent that made it look like a tin with a dimple. He set them by the fire and warmed his hands without asking to stay. She noticed his knuckles were red with cold and that he had new burrs on his socks. "Thank you," she said, and meant more than beans. He shrugged, as if the sky had made the gesture first. "There's a line the sheriff's men are riding," he said, after the creek gave them its silver talk. "Looking for a woman, they say, took what wasn't hers, and left her husband shamed." She flinched. The word husband hit like a thrown plate you don't see until it's already shattering. "He wasn't." She stopped. The truth lived in a house too far to walk to in one sentence. Calder poked the flame with a twig. "Don't have to tell me anything," he said, not looking at her. "Don't owe me a measure. Eat." He slid her the tin. "I'll sit the dark a while and listen. Then I'll go." "Oh, stay," she said, surprising herself. The word felt like pouring warm water into a cup, something you had to do slow or spill. Just stay till morning, if you want. He did. He slept without taking her fire's center, head tipped back on his rolled coat, hat brim, shading the part of his face that always looked most like weather. She did not sleep all at once. She slept in small pockets like money you hide in different places, so if one is found, the others are safe. The mornings came thinner and kind, because he was there. He didn't reach toward her with questions. He reached toward the day with tasks. He mended a strap on her shoe with a nail he scissored thin with a knife. He taught her how to breathe wide through her back when the cold made her chest tight. He showed her how to look at a ridge and guess which side would hold the sun's last heat. Trust was not a speech. It was a dozen small permissions. She let him lead the roan past her to drink. She let his coat settle around her shoulders without apology when the wind went teeth first through the junipers. She ate the last biscuit he pressed into her hand, and when she licked the crumbs from her palm, she didn't turn away so he wouldn't see hunger. He saw and didn't mark it down against her. Once when she woke from a mean dream that smelled of lamp oil and boiled shirts and a door you couldn't open because someone had pushed a dresser against it, she found his palm on the earth near her like a camp marker. You are here. You are not alone. She set her fingers near his, not touching, and measured her breath against his. After a time, both steadied. On the 5th morning, a rider found them. Not Turkey Feather, not his laugh. A man in a town coat over range pants, the compromise uniform of someone who needed both rooms to accept him. The badge on his vest was dull from honest dust. He lifted a hand as he approached, palm out, the way you do when riding into a skittish herd. "Calder," he called without aiming his voice at Myra. "You keeping company?" "Morning, Ames." Calder stood, slow and apparent, as if his bones clicked into place in front of witnesses. "Company wants quiet." Ames reined in and took in the scene with a glance that neither judged nor forgave. "Town's tied in knots," he said. "Husband's thrown rope on every word and's hauling them where he wants. Says the wife ran off with the church tithe. Says she took his mother's ring. Says she's—" He did not finish. He looked at Myra then, not at the shawl, not at the hair that needed washing, but at the spine that somehow had not broken. "Ma'am," he said, and meant it. The choice fell like a coin that had been waiting since the first shot in town. Turkey Feather grinned to show his friends he could take the thing that stood in his way. His hand went to the gun, greedy and late. Calder's rifle lifted, slow to start, fast to finish, like a river after a dam lets go. The air went sharp. The cliff did not decide it for them. They would decide it for themselves. Myra's mouth went dry. Her hands tightened on the roan's rein, as if the leather might tell her how to live under a name she didn't choose. Calder's voice put boards under her feet. "Ames," he said, "that man's mouth has been a saloon spittoon for longer than I've lived in these parts. You know it. You cleaned after it just last spring when he set it under the preacher's feet." Ames's jaw moved as if chewing old news. "I know it," he said. "Trouble is, he's louder when he's hurt, and folks like to lean toward loud when their own days are quiet." He sighed. "There's a warrant, of a sort, for questions. I won't put hands on her. I ain't that kind of deputy. But if I don't ask her to come answer, some colder man will." Calder turned to Myra. He didn't tell her what to do. He didn't say, "Trust me." He just stood where the air was thinner and let her walk into it if she chose. The land waited with them, holding its breath in the winter way it has. Myra swallowed once, twice, like a girl practicing her first word. "Ames," she said, tasting the name. "You were kind once to a girl with a skinned knee who'd been told it was her own fault she fell. You cleaned the gravel and said the ground didn't keep lists. Do you remember?" He blinked, surprised by a mirror held up from far behind. "I do," he said after a moment. "I do." "Then hear me," she said, voice growing in the room her courage was furnishing as she spoke. "I didn't take the church tithe. I put it in the hands of the woman who counts even when the counting is only beans and laundry money, because she counts honest and he counts things that shine. I didn't take his mother's ring." He pawned it last fall for whiskey and bought it back when people were looking. And now that people are looking again, he's got a story that makes him the one with empty pockets." Her throat trembled but didn't close. "I took myself," she finished. "I took my body and my breath and the little pieces of my heart that still made a sound, and I left before I couldn't hear them anymore. Silence after honesty is the longest kind." The creek ran. A hawk wrote a circle over the ridge in patient cursive. Ames rubbed a thumb over the face of his badge as if it were a saint's coin. He nodded once. "I can't unsign a thing I didn't sign," he said, "but I can count when I see an honest ledger. I can say I spoke with you, and you weren't the sort of woman that needed iron to be brought anywhere." He shifted in the saddle. "Trouble is, there's more than law looking. There's men with pride like stovepipe hats, too tall for their heads, too stiff to bend. And there's him. He's hired them. They chose. The first shot came from turkey feather, because pride moves quicker than sense. It went wide, wind-bit, spitting rock a yard to Calder's left. Calder's answer came without hurry, and it found the feather's hat, knocking the turkey plume free to dance one proud, stupid circle before the wind laid it flat in the sage. That should have been enough. It wasn't. The two new coats split to either side the way men do who have practiced at shooting around other men and not hitting what they love. Myra saw where they'd go before they did. She didn't have a gun, but she had the land. "Left," she said low, and Calder slid with her, so the ridge's hump cut one man from his angle. The second coat tried a guess and caught nothing but a bite of cedar. The husband didn't fire. He watched, hands like birds with broken wings hovering over his belt as if the guns could load courage for him. "End this," Calder called, voice carrying quiet authority even while bullets carved the air. "Turn and ride." "And leave with nothing," Turkey Feather barked, scrambling behind the low rock as if the rock owed him shelter. He didn't notice his hat gone, or maybe he did, and it made him wild. "I'll take the woman. I'll take the horse. I'll take your quiet and make it loud." He popped up to prove he could, and a sliver of lead kissed the curve of his ear because Calder had decided to mark him without making him less of a man to God. Myra felt the ridge under her palms, the grit, the old heat still buried from summer like pantry stores. A coil of fear lifted its head inside her, not to bite, but to ask which way they ran together, toward or away. "With me," she whispered. Not to him, but to herself. She gathered a fistful of the shawl and tucked it at her waist, freeing her legs. "We go downhill," she said. "Down?" Calder flicked her the smallest look, trust already inside it like a wick waiting for fire. Downhill put them in the cut, the narrow place. Narrow places kill you or save you. You don't know which until the end. "Down," she repeated, and lifted her chin at the dead cedar. Its trunk lay like a rib across the slope, fat at the base. "We make them follow our line." He nodded once, sharp. "On 3, he said, eyes never leaving the angles. 1. Time slowed, as if the story wanted to watch itself. 2. The wind shifted and blew the turkey feather a foot. 3. They ran. Short steps first, then confident, then committed. Bullets bit at the soil behind them, little jealous men with bad aim. The cut received them. The cedar rib forced anyone chasing single file. Calder took rear, rifle slung, Colt out now, because the rhythm had changed and rifles write long sentences when you need short ones. "This way," he breathed, and Myra slithered over rock that had held heat for months and was now cold as a door latch at night. One of the new coats took the bait and came hard into the cut. Calder let him see a shoulder, let him fire, then put around exactly where the echo of the man's shot came from. The echo coughed and fell. The husband yelled the man's name, Hank, and the name blew thin and useless as smoke. Turkey Feather, angrier for having bled without dying, chose a steeper flank to the right. Myra watched his intent, the way you watch a snake's head, and move your ankle before it does. "He'll try high," she said, "where the shale is mean." Calder looked at the slope and the lousy stitching of rock, and knew what her eyes had learned being hurt. They'd learned where hurt comes from. "Oh, can he make it?" "Pride can," she said, and the line made something like a smile try the corner of his mouth even there, even then. Pride did try. The shale slid. He clawed. He got higher than a careful man would, and lower than a smart man needed, and then committed the sin that kills you on rock. He looked back. Calder didn't shoot him then. He didn't need to. The land did the math. Turkey Feather went on his knees and skinned them, and then his hands were full, and he needed them for falling, and he couldn't. And then gravity, which doesn't care for poems, tugged. He slid, cursed, grabbed at nothing, fired wild, and almost took his own foot and finally hit the cedar rib with a sound that a doctor would know was bone. He lay groaning, hand out, as if to ask the sky why it hadn't loved him like he thought it did. She laced her fingers with his. "You did both," she said. "The first saved my life. The second made it worth the saving." They watched the river of light glide into night. The first star blinked, then another, a careful agreement. Myra turned to him, mouth near his ear, breath warm as bread. "If this life we made sits right in your chest," she whispered, "come sit with us again tomorrow. Bring your chair. Bring your heart. There are more stories here than fences, and we'll keep a place for you by the fire." The last new coat was already measuring his pay against leaving. The husband hissed at him, "Go," which tells you about a man. He'll hire you to get shot, and then send you down first, when it's time to prove who's boss. The coat hesitated. He didn't deserve to die for someone else's lie. Myra stepped where he could see her and shook her head once. Go, he went. Every story that ends without a mother receiving news in a store doorway is a story that did one thing right, that left the husband. He came into the cut because shame was stabbing him, and he wanted to stab back at something that could bleed. Calder leveled at his belt buckle. "Don't," he warned. "You ain't built for this kind of day." "I'm built for what's mine," the husband spat, a rope of spit and words that had no clean difference between them. He lifted his gun, and the barrel looked everywhere but where a barrel should. He pointed it at Myra because pointing it elsewhere would make what he said untrue, even to him. Calder moved. The gun went off. The sound did that canyon trick where it is the only thing in the world for a heartbeat. Myra felt heat cross her sleeve, like a match head passing a finger. Calder made a sound like breath deciding to be something else. He stumbled, caught himself on the cedar, and looked down at his shirt where red was writing news you don't want. Not a flood, a slow soak. Bad enough. The husband's eyes got bigger and smaller at once. He'd hurt something solid, and it scared him more than his own father had. He pointed again, hand shaking, and now his mouth forgot words entirely. Myra stepped between. Not bravado, geometry. She filled the angle. Her voice went calm the way voices do when you finally see your life straight on. "You point at me," she said. "Finish what you always started." His hand quivered. The barrel drew small circles. She walked forward until it pressed her shawl and left a cold, mouth-shaped dent. "No," she told the iron. She looked over it to the man. No, it wasn't a word anymore. It was the sum of her days. She put her hand on the barrel and pushed it down the same way Calder had done to the Feather's gun days ago, slow, as if correcting a child. He let her. He didn't know how not to obey a will that for once had decided against him. Calder's weight hit the cedar, and he slid down to sit. He watched with eyes that were steady, even while the world ran a bit to the left and then to the right. "Leave," he told the husband, softer now, "because I can still hit you easy, and you'll be dead, and I'll have to live with that, and I'd rather live with other things."